Okay, well, welcome everyone to today's episode. I am so excited to have Dr. Tiffany Ross with us today. And she is a marriage and family therapist. And I really thought that it was a great opportunity to have her on, hear her story and her perspectives on a lot of things that we're going to talk about today. Just because you know me in my podcast and the work that I do, I really want to focus on manifesting love, relationships, and we want to get some input from a professional like Tiffany to share with us about healthy relationships and setting boundaries and how to look maybe for red flags in a relationship, and things like that, just to make sure that when you are finding love in your wonderful relationship, that you are going about it in a way that's going to be good for you both, but especially for you. So, Tiffany, thank you so much for being here. And I'm wondering if you could share a bit about your story and what brought you to be doing what you're doing today as a marriage and family therapist.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I don't know if you saw, but my light went out. So I was like, what in the world is going on? But yes, I have been a marriage and family therapist for about 11 years, but I've worked in the social science field for about 15 years. And something that really, truly inspired me is just the things that I've been through in the past. Like I was a teen mom, so I got pregnant with my first son at the age of 15, and then again at the age of 18, and I dropped out of college and went on like this whole search of who are you? Who
Mm,
am I? And I like to tell people, like, I went into self-sabotage mode, and because I didn't feel like I had a purpose or a calling. And somewhere around my son being about 9 months, my second son being about 9 months, I got this epiphany that, oh, you need to go back to school. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't really think about what other people were saying, because I had a lot of naysayers. Like, what are you going to do with two children and 18 years old? How are you
oh,
going to take
wow.
care of them? And I just went for it. I went and enrolled into university about an hour and a half from my home, and I left behind everyone. There was only one person in town that I knew, and I needed that. I needed that start over.
Okay.
And that's exactly what I did. And so that's what's motivated me in my business. And as being a marriage and family therapist, it's just reaching those people who were like me, lost, not knowing where to go, struggling in and out of relationships. And I wanted to reach them. I wanted to reach back
Mm.
and pay it forward, I guess, for lack of better words.
Yeah, well, that's great. I think that's what a lot of us do when we start in business. We often go in a field that directly touches us in our previous story, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
definitely a need for that. So when you were younger, you said you struggle with, in and out of relationships. What would you say was your biggest struggle or the biggest factor in, I guess, having those challenges?
Yeah. My biggest struggle was really looking for love. I didn't love myself, and I didn't really come from a background where loving or learning to love myself was taught.
Okay.
And I was adopted by my great aunt. I didn't wasn't raised by neither one of my parents, and so I questioned a lot of who am I.
Mm,
And so I struggled a lot with just really accepting who I am, and really recognizing the positive parts of me. Like, we always readily recognize what's not good about us, and all we kind of dismiss those. And I did that for many, many years. And so I was looking for love. That's simply put, I was looking for love.
I can totally relate to that.
Yeah,
In a memoir I took part in a few years ago, that was kind of one of my stories. I was looking for love, and so
yeah,
I'd be going out and you know, d- drinking, partying, whatever, and then kind of just trying to look for love. I was like constantly had that search and need, like I needed that. But
yes,
it wasn't until that I finally just let it all go, that I accepted it, and that I was just like you said, loving yourself, and
yeah,
then just forgetting about that. And then that's when it kind of all happened for me. Um,
yeah,
so I
yeah.
think that you're right that, the self-love is a really big factor.
Yeah, it most certainly is, and it was for me. And even like in the beginning, I didn't realize that that's what was going on, but that carried on in every relationship. And one thing that I realized for myself, I had to realize this for myself, that it didn't matter what relationship I was in at that particular time. I followed me in every one of them. That was the
Mm,
common denominator. Like I would go in and out of these relationships and find something wrong with every one of them and not really look at myself. And the common denominator was me. It was me.
that's quite a realization. So how did you get
Yeah.
to that realization? That's impressive.
Yeah, my great aunt. I was in college. This is, a true story. I was in college and I was having one of those moments where I was just kind of in a pity party. And as single mom, not really have the resources that I needed, and just trying to figure out life. I was still a child myself. I was a teen,
Mm,
and in that space, and I had an argument with my great aunt, who I call my mom. And I was at the point to where she couldn't really talk to me, and she wrote me a letter. And I got the letter and I sat down and I read the letter. And she told me in that letter that you are angry, but you are angry at yourself. It was like, what? What did she mean? But it made me really think and take a hard look at what I was putting out in the world.
mm, yeah, for sure. Because it's not easy to have that, like a rude
Mm.
awakening like that,
No,
right?
no, it's not. Yeah,
So, in your work now, is boundary something that you talk a lot about with in your
absolutely.
work? Yeah. Can
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
tell us a little bit about kind of what boundaries are and what that looks like? Because I know, like it's hard to set boundaries, right?
Hmm. Yes.
Because I know for me personally, then you feel guilty, you feel bad because you have, this other person has these expectations on you and you don't want to upset them or make them sad with
Yeah.
you, but it's not easy.
No, no, it's not. And I had a client who told me the other day, she said, up until a year ago, I had no idea what boundaries were. I didn't know, had never been taught, no one ever talked about them. And so I like to coin myself as the boundaries queen. So when I start talking about boundaries, like my face lights up and I, kind of get all bubbly inside. I don't know why, but I am. I just like talking about boundaries. And that's because I struggled with setting them for so long.
Mm,
And so number one, boundaries is just your expectations or what you expect for yourself. That's number one. You can't set boundaries without knowing that as a foundation. And then the other part of that is knowing what you will and will not accept from other people. And without those two components, you cannot set boundaries.
mm,
So shortly put, that's what I see boundaries as.
okay. And why do you think most people struggle with setting them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like they struggle because they don't know their own worth.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Mm,
that's the biggest part of it, knowing your own worth and knowing how to put those expectations on other people. And I think you said it, Charlotte, when you said that it's hard to put those in place because it's hard to communicate that to other people. What I want, what I need, what I desire, what I expect. Like it's hard to communicate that because you have to actually stand in your power of who you are.
yes. And then I guess, there's always the risk of, well, if I set these boundaries and if this person doesn't respect them, then there's the chance of, that relationship not working out. And
Yes.
like the fear or the sadness of, the potential of losing that relationship, right? Something that you've been searching for your whole life, love, and
Yeah.
then it not working out because your boundaries or maybe too strict for that person. But like you said, it all comes back to recognizing your own self-worth
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what, yeah.
That's so good. And I think that, with the risk of losing the other person comes the what something that we don't really acknowledge is the grief part of it, which is what you said. Like, facing well, how am I going to deal with the loss of this person? I really do care about them. I really do, possibly love them, and, all the feelings that are attached to that. Like, how am I going to stand alone knowing that this person could possibly leave me?
Mm,
That's hard.
yeah. Yeah. I remember telling one of my girlfriends before, I told her, it's like, this was after kind of, I'll say, my recovery phase, kind of. You have to be just willing and ready just to lose it all.
Yeah,
That's the only way.
yeah,
Right. I said it reminded me of when I was in Tunisia and I was going through like a little market, buying jewelry and things like that. And you're always, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of haggling back and forth for a price, right? To get a
yeah,
price. And then I said, there's this one time there's something that I really wanted, but I wasn't getting the price that I wanted from the vendor. So I just walked away. I was like, oh,
yeah,
whatever, that's fine. I'll just walk. I totally walked away. I totally released all attachment to it. Then who was following me down the street to sell me at the price that I wanted?
yes,
He
yes,
did. I was like, that's a reminder. I was like, because I was just willing to walk away from it completely. And that's how that
yes.
I got what I wanted.
Yes, that's amazing. Like, I love the analogy that you use, and you didn't say it was an analogy, but it is like
Yeah,
releasing the outcome. Like, we have to totally release the outcome of how this person is going to respond, and whether or not they're even going to see our worth and value. Because at the end of the day, it does not matter whether or not they see it. You have to see that for yourself.
exactly. And like I said, like, maybe, you have to, like I said, I'm restating it, but maybe that person's not going to follow you and they're not going to go after you. And
Yeah,
that's a possibility, but you just have to be okay with that, right?
yeah, yeah. Perfect. You
Oh,
have to be okay. And it is easier said than done.
totally. Totally. Yes.
Yeah.
So any recommendations on how to manage that?
Which part? The leaving or the
Like
staying?
just being okay with the possibility of leaving it all behind. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it comes back, like you said, just your own self-worth, but how do you build up your self-worth? How do you get yourself there?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And something that I teach, I was actually teaching it this morning, was the way I do it is drawing a circle, and on the inside of it, putting yourself, because that's what we're talking about. Like, what you want, what you need, what you desire, what you expect. And all of those things go inside the circle. And then on the outside of the circle, all the things that you don't want, you no longer want to tolerate, you no longer want to put up with all those, the negativity, the backlash, or the back and forth in a relationship, or whatever your issues may be, in setting those boundaries. But all of the things that you don't want on the outside, and then you have to decide whether or not it's worth it. Is the inside worth it or the outside worth it? And that's a personal decision that we all have to come to terms with.
Yeah, that's true, eh? Is it worth it?
Yeah,
It's your own decision.
yeah,
So can you just give us some examples of, what a healthy relationship looks like versus what an unhealthy relationship looks like?
yeah, yeah. Good one. And so I have this thing that helps me to be able to define a healthy relationship. So I teach women that you have to know what you want, what you need, and what you desire. And on top of that, you have to be able to communicate what you want, what you need, and what you desire to other people. And I call it your relationship voice. It's what
Mm,
you want, what you need, what you desire, and then being able to communicate that to someone else. And I absolutely believe that is number one in deciding whether or not the relationship is healthy. If you're in a healthy relationship, then it is like it's easy for you to be able to communicate that to your partner. But if you're in an unhealthy relationship, you're unable to do those things, you're unable to communicate them. Or when you do communicate them, that person dismisses you, antagonizes you, may have some other unnice things to say to you, then that's
mm,
key that you are in an unhealthy relationship.
mm. Yeah, really good
Mhm.
points there. Because communication, I think, is the key.
Yes.
to a good, healthy relationship, right?
Yes. It's foundational. It's foundation. Communication, love, and or communication, not even love. Communication and respect are at
Mm,
the foundation.
yeah, exactly. Because I just think, like, why, like, I'm just thinking, when you're talking about this, well, why wouldn't someone feel comfortable possibly communicating what they want and what they need in their feelings, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, maybe because they're afraid of backlash or fighting or things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Or losing the person. Something you said, at the beginning. You could possibly lose this person if you stand up for what you want, what you need,
Mhm.
or even communicate what you desire. That
Yeah,
means the other person has to meet those expectations, and they may not want to.
yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah,
Let them go.
yeah, yeah. That's right. Let them go.
Yeah. So like when you think about like early phase dating, or just, I mean, the online dating maybe more now so as well. Like in the very early stages, like, are there anything that you would say are kind of maybe red flags to watch out for um that may kind of lead to an unhealthy relationship or something like that?
Oh, absolutely. There's so many things, and what I've learned that I don't know whether or not it is the generation or what's going on, or like you said, the online date. I don't know, but I feel like a lot of things that we overlook, especially with women, is that we ignore the emotional abuse, and that has, what I found in my business at least, has been so common, and women tolerate it not knowing that they are still um, being exposed or experiencing a form of abuse. So controlling, or someone pressuring you to do things that you're just not ready to do or don't want to do, the name calling, or even the manipulative, like the playing games or the back and forth, or trying to make you feel like you're not worth something or a particular thing. Like all of these are signs that there's some issues that may not be, that you may not need to overlook in that relationship. Those are red flags, or insulting you, or putting you down in some kind of fashion. All those are signs of emotional abuse. And then of course the physical abuse is intimidation, power, someone always controlling you, or always want to know your location. Like I had a young lady who say, "Oh, I always got to drop my location or send my location to my partner." No, you don't. You
Mm,
don't have to do that. And those are red flags.
that's
If the
big.
person does not trust where you are going or what you're saying to them, and they always want to know and feel the need to be in control, that's a red flag.
Yeah. So, and I think like why do you think that women may stay in those situations? Like I'm thinking that it probably comes back to again, like the self-worth is not there or the self-love, self-esteem, confidence.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. That's it. That's why they stay. And then lack of education, which is why you're doing, is so important. Because some people just don't know. And especially if they've experienced that before in the past, or they've grown up in a chaotic household or not had that model to them from authority figures or adults, then they don't know. They
Mm,
don't know. And I mean, I think sometimes our culture sometimes does women a disjustice, because we don't necessarily value women as much. Like we're learning to, and I have to, give us credit for that. We're learning to, but we haven't over the years. We have not, over generations past, not valued women, or even seen women as equals. And
mm,
so now we're having to really teach women what to look for, the red flags.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Mm. Um, I had another question and then I lost it. I was listening to this happens to me all the time. Um, what was it? Anyway, um, oh, no, it's gonna bother me until it comes.
Do that all the time.
Yeah. How about codependency?
Oh, that's good. Yeah, yeah.
Can you talk a bit about that?
Mm-hmm. That's another one that we don't catch. codependent codependent relationships. Um, I use it because you often see it in addictions where you have one partner that's the enabler and one partner that gets to kind of underfunction in the therapy where that's what we call it, underfunction and overfunction. And typically in codependent relationships, you have a person that's doing all the work while the other person does gets to fly up under the radar, and you're enabling some type of behavior. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be addictions. It could be that this person gets to stay in your life and love you or pretend to love you. And and they get all this access to you, but they're not doing the work or they're not putting in the work on the other end of it. And so you're having to work hard, you're having to do all the work, and you're the one scheduling all the date nights and all this stuff while the person just gets the privilege of being there. So that's
Oh.
one example of codependent.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. I think the first time I realized exactly what it was and that I had some codependency tendencies myself in my relationship was I heard Glennon Doyle talking about um, she wanted to go for a long walk on the beach and watch the sunset, and her partner Abby didn't want to walk on the beach, and so she thought that they would compromise and just go for a short walk on the beach. But she was very upset because Abby didn't want to go at all. And then I was thinking about how I had a similar situation with my partner. He's not into going out for walks and things like that. I do like walking in nature. And, but I realized that I wasn't doing certain things because he wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
I could easily get up and go. He's not stopping me, but I wasn't doing it. So
Yeah.
why? Why do we do this?
Yeah, that's so good. Like it reminded me of my marriage as early on. Well, up until about maybe 5 years into our marriage, is very codependent. And so I would find myself always being the one, like I use that example, scheduling date nights and always wanting to be the one to sit down and talk about finances and always just, doing these things. And it was maybe a couple years ago that I came into the realization that, like you did, like I could really do this by myself. I don't need him to validate me. And that's what it came down to for me. And
Mm.
for most women, like you have to get to that point to where you're confident enough to validate you and you're no longer willing to compromise who you are for the safety and the security of the relationship.
Yes.
And I think it goes back to just being that we love hard. Women tend to love hard. We put our all into relationships, and sometimes we don't catch it when we slip into that codependent role.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really like the way you talked about, validating us because that's what it is, right? Saying that,
Yeah,
yes, what you want to do is good, let's do it. Instead
yeah,
of us putting aside everything that we like to do and doing what, the partner, most often the male, I think in situations wants to do.
yeah,
Oh gosh.
yeah.
So much there. It's like,
I know, I know.
it's big stuff.
It is.
Um, so if someone so we talked about kind of about, red flags to watch out for and to stay away from. And basically, it's really bolstering up your self-love and self-esteem, self-confidence to stand firmly in your ground and not accept less than what you want and what you desire.
Yeah,
But what if someone is already in an unhealthy relationship? So if you're already in an unhealthy relationship, it's probably going to be even more difficult to build up that self-esteem, right? So do you have any recommendations for someone to be able to, you know, kind of what they should do, how they, I mean, it's because it's not always easy to get out of a relationship like that, right? Like
no.
sometimes for many women, financially as well, that could be a big barrier. So what are your thoughts and recommendations around that?
Yeah, yeah, good. And I have to explain a little bit here because I think sometimes we think that all relationships or all unhealthy relationships are created equal, and they're not. Like I like to separate unhealthy from toxic,
Okay.
because those are very different. Now, if you're in a unhealthy relationship, now that's typically fixable. Just go see a therapist. stand up for yourself if that's the issue. Redefine some boundaries. That's a really big. Maybe go back and look at your expectations of that person or yourself and see whether or not they're realistic, or if there's something that you guys can compromise on. An unhealthy relationship most of the time is fixable with work from both partners, but both partners have to be really willing to put in the work.
Mm-hmm.
Toxic relationships, however, are different. They typically are not repairable, and you don't want to stay in them long enough in hopes that they will be repairable, because in toxic relationships you are staying there, but yourself, who you are, your needs, wants, desires, your emotions, your mental ability, all that's being diminished. So they're very different, unhealthy and
Yeah.
toxic. Yeah.
Yeah. So is he
And
toxic being more towards like the abusive, very
yeah,
abusive side? Yeah.
absolutely. And for those, I would say for women, if you're in an abusive relationship, the number one thing as a therapist, I would say, is your safety is always of concern. So I would work with a client on, what are you going to do when these behaviors start happening? What are you going to do? What is your escape plan? That's
Mm,
that's it. It's time to start getting an escape plan and reaching out for some help and some accountability, somebody that's going to support you. If you don't have any support system, they have hotlines, have the domestic abuse hotline that you can contact, or any of your mental health professionals or counselors or anyone that cares about you could help support you through that, and
mm,
get your escape plan together. Even if
mhm.
that means a part of your escape plan is, I need to find another job so that I can be able to take care of myself.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, talking about it, getting out of an abusive relationship, I think, there's a stigma around that too, right? To
Yeah,
women. And
yeah,
so they don't necessarily want to talk about it
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah, which is
share.
yeah, yeah, which is unfortunate. And I think that we can take on a lot of guilt from that, as if it's something that we did to deserve to be there. And in actuality, that's just not true. We all make mistakes. We all may miss red flags. Like, everyone
Mhm.
could do that. But you never deserve to be in a situation where you're being mistreated, misused, or abused. No one deserves that.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, I remembered what my question or what I wanted to say earlier was. And maybe like, and I think it's a good that it's coming up now because, when I have, some single girlfriends or whatever, they tell me kind of, these terrible dates that they go on um, and whatnot. And, like, I think I don't know why, but I feel like sending naked pictures has become a new trend in the online dating world. I'm like, that never ever happened to me. I did do online dating, but that never
Yeah,
happened to me. And,
yeah,
and hearing those bad stories and things like that, I'm like, I know it sounds heartless, I think a little bit, but I say, people will only treat you the way you let them treat you.
yes, yes, yes.
And I know
I
that
say
sounds
the same.
hard, especially, talking about an abusive relationship, that you let them abuse you. That's why you did it. But I think an abusive relationship becomes more complex than that statement.
Hmm. Hmm. I no, I think that statement's perfect. I say that all the time. And to add to that, people would not treat you better than you treat yourself. As it, and like you said, no one deserves. I say this all the, no one deserves to be in an abusive relationship. So please, by no means, don't take what I'm saying as, you deserve it.
Yeah.
But I feel like we beat up on ourselves first, and then that makes it okay for someone else to do it. And
Yeah.
this could be in true for a toxic relationship or even in a healthy relationship. Like, people usually rarely ever treat you better than you treat yourself.
Wow, that's really good. That's like, it's like one of those hit you in the face kind of things. It's true though. It's so
Yeah.
true. And we are very hard on ourselves, right?
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
the stories that are going round and round in our head.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even the unhealed places of our lives too, that we move on and ignore or dismiss, like, they're not there, or that we're okay. and in reality we're not, you know. And a lot of when we see these people, and myself included, because I was there, I told you guys my story in the beginning. But when we see people that are in these types of situations, most of the time they have some sort of trauma from their past that they just have not dealt with.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
So dealing with trauma, loving yourself, setting your boundaries, and yeah, sticking to
Yeah.
them, building yourself up are all
Yeah.
important parts of.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
finding and, keeping finding the love and the relationship that you want and also keeping it healthy and what you want and desire, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah.
Great. Any other thoughts or things that you want to share that you see a lot in your work or something that you just want to make sure that women hear?
Yeah. That they're special. Um, I like to tell women, you are the prize. It's like when you are being found or when you come into a relationship with someone, you are the prize. And you have to believe that from the beginning. I am the prize. And this may sound harsh, they get the opportunity to be in my life. Like I choose you for you to be in my life. I have complete power and control over that. And I am the prize. So I'm not going to allow certain things to come in my circle, and it's completely fine for you to do that and expect that.
I love that. That's great. Well, thank you. So where
Welcome.
can we find you online if anyone wants to connect with you and your work?
Yes, I am on Facebook and Instagram at Dr. Tiffany Ross, or you can find me on drtiffanyross.com.
Awesome. And I will also be sharing those links in my show notes, charlagoodwin.com, so you can go there and check it out. Any last words, Tiffany?
No, this
No.
has been wonderful. Thank you so, so much for
Yes.
inviting me on. I've
Well,
enjoyed it.
thank you for coming. I really enjoyed it
You're
too.
welcome.